Hello and welcome back. All right, so I'm actually working on this client project, and so I was actually meant to implement a kind of a photo filter functionality. So by the way, we're actually using React Native Expo, and yeah, so I actually worked on this feature, and I didn't quite see, find much tutorials on it online. So I felt it's actually useful if I share this with you guys, right? So the part I worked on is basically this part. So I'm going to click on it. So basically, you can see me right away. So I can enable the flash. My background is a little bit dark, so my room is dark, so you might not be able to see me quite clearly, but that's fine. I can actually flip the camera as well. So you can click on the flip. So it's going to flip the camera right there. So this is actually my PC. You can actually see right there. Yeah, so I can actually do all of this. And the interesting thing about this app is not these little features, but the fact that I can snap an image and by clicking on that button, and this image can actually be filtered. So I can click on edit, I can click on filter, and be able to filter by different filters we have available, right? Brightness, sepia, and so on, right? So these are the different filters we already have available. And the cool thing about this is basically the fact that you can select an existing image from your gallery, right? So I'm just going to select this one, and click on edit, right? You can click on filter. So you can actually see we have the first one. This is the original. So this is the Santorini, this is the brightness, this is the sepia, this is grayscale, this is invert, this is contrast, right? So these are the different things you can actually do with what we have. So what we have here at the bottom was actually achieved using the React Native flat list, which is cool. And for the image featuring itself, we're actually painting on the canvas using the Shopify Skia. So it's actually a library that is cool to achieve all of this effect, right? So yeah, I didn't quite see much tutorials on how you can basically approach all of this. So I basically spent a lot of time trying to research it and trying to understand it. So I hope that photo filtering applications, right? So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I think we are good to go. And so basically, we're going to start from this screen. So you can see here, we basically have like the gallery. Let me turn this off a bit. So good. So yeah, you can actually see like the gallery. We have the little thing that we can see here. So this is actually the capture button. Then we have the setting, and then we have currently toggle between photo and video. Right. So yeah, so we basically have to worry about this screen. So what we're using to build the screen is actually very straightforward, right? So we're using. I'll just take this off. It's not used anyway. Right. So as I said before, we're actually using React Native Expo to be able to work with this application. And then we have this current selection. As you can see, it is photo. So we have two modes, right? So that's the photo mode or the video mode, right? So for this, we have photo, we have video. So this is just us trying to keep track of that. And also, what we are doing now is that we are just using our themes to be able to distinguish between the light mode as well as the dark mode, right? So if you are using S4 SDK from 51 upwards, you should be able to know how this works as well. So it's actually pretty straightforward. You take the light and dark color from the component. It always comes for every major route, right? So if you are using an app-based router, which Expo application is based off, so everything in the app folder is a route. So if you're using this kind of formation, you should be able to have access to the light color as well as the dark color, right? So yeah, so first things first, what's actually important for us to know on this particular screen is that we are doing a couple of things, right? So we have the flip feature, we have the flash feature. So we're going to start with those first, and then we'll take it down, right? So yeah, when you scroll down, you can actually see. So I'm just going to search for flip, so I can show you guys that one. Flip. Okay, here we go. Close this out. Okay. All right. So here we go. So now, when you first of all, when you actually see the flip, search for it again. So we have the flip, we have the flash. So now the flip, what it's doing is actually being handled by the toggle camera facing. So this is actually the function that is responsible for that. So we already have a state called set facing. So this state now basically has front or back. So if you're actually using expo camera, which we are using, you should be able to know how this basically works. So if you're using expo camera like this, right? There's a camera. So camera basically takes in this kind of facing property. So I'm going to scroll down to where we're actually using the actual camera a bit, so you guys can see. So you can see it has a facing prop and it's of camera type. So camera type is actually front or back. So we have a state to basically toggle this. So when you set this to false, let's scroll up. When you set this to false, to front, it focuses on the front camera and you can use a flash, right? And you set it to back, you can focus on the back camera, and also you can use the flash, right? So I can flip this over, right? This is the other part of the camera. I'm not able to see quite clearly because of how dark it is. But then you can actually play around with those two different dimensions of your camera, right? So yeah, you might actually be wondering, how am I toggling on the flash? I can actually toggle on the flash real quick. The flash is on, the flash is off. The flash is on now. So yeah, so the way we're actually doing this, we're actually using the toggle flash function right here. And you can see this is where we are calling it. So we click on this flash icon or flash button, we trigger the toggle flash, right? So yeah, so the flash is actually a prop that the React Native, the expo camera basically takes in. So I'm going to go back to the expo camera. So you can actually see we have enable touch. We can actually just put, if it's on, true or false, it's a boolean, right? So if you want to enable touch, set it to true. If you don't want to enable touch, set it to false. So this is exactly how you can control the touch for the expo camera, which makes sense. And also, one other thing we need to worry about is the what's it called? Is actually the structure of it, right? So, but before now, I'm just going to scroll down through the code so you guys get to see how every other thing comes together, right? So we have the preview image. Preview image is actually what we're using to you know, to take a snapshot of the actual image, right? So this is what we do. When you click on this, you're basically trying to preview your image. So snap, basically, that's the name, right? So you take picture, that's the proper name for it. Then we'll set the URL we'll get from that picture, not really URL, but the actual file to the preview state. So then we can be able to preview it. So yes, so this is actually what we're using to pick an image. So you can see we are calling a function here. That function is invoke camera selection and return URL. Not really URL, but it returns the actual image. So yeah, so this is actually the function we're using there. First off, we basically launch the image library as sync. So what this is responsible in doing, it basically opens up your gallery. That's the simple thing it's trying to do. So when you close up your gallery, that means you've basically cancelled that operation, right? So it's going to run the result.cancelled, right? For example, you have a loading state or whatever, you might want to, do some cleanups in the result.cancelled block, right? Yeah, so in this case, when the result is not cancelled, that means an asset is actually selected, like result or assets, the first one, right? So you want to set, the image URL, whatever we have to that. So we just return it, right? So yeah, so if you see what this is doing, it returns this image, we set it to the preview. Simple. All right, so we can actually cancel the preview if you want to cancel it. So we just set the preview URL back to nothing, which is fine. We can go back and so on. So in cases of there's no permission given, right, we can actually use this to display a little screen, right, that shows that, oh, no permission, right, and then we don't really want to put any stack there, arrow, right, there's no header, there's nothing. So if permission is not granted, we show them this screen so that they can actually click on grant permission button. So when they click on this grant permission button, they will be granted a permission. So you can actually see we have a function here we are using to request permission. So when I open up that function, it's using the use camera permissions from React Expo camera, right? So you have a use camera permissions hook. So yeah, so we request permission, and once we actually request permission, you actually see a kind of what's it called? You see a kind of a pop-up that shows that, oh, do you want to enable camera in your particular screen? So the test that is responsible for something like that is what you have within your app.json, right? So for example, you have allow Blanco to access your camera. So this test will be rendered. So it will actually be like a pop-up to, to show you guys how that works. Is to just clear the cache and that should reset everything, right? Okay, very good. So yeah, we can close this out, close this out, close this out, and open the app again. Okay, so get started and log in. So we're just going to put any random email. There we go. So yeah, we should be able to log in now. Okay, good, good. So now that we can actually click on this feature, this camera, you can see we need your permission. So this is exactly what I'm just going to do all of this. I'm going to go back to what I was explaining earlier. So this will show, right? If the permission is not granted, we'll see this particular screen. So we need your permission to show the camera, right? So you can use this request and this button to basically grant that kind of permission, right? I'm going to enlarge this a bit so you guys can see it. Okay, so you can use this button to basically grant some level of permission, right? So which is fine. So let's grant it. If I click on it now, I see a pop-up, right? So this pop-up is the same thing of the test I put in here, right? So yeah, you can actually see allow Glam Gallery to take images and so on. So you might actually wonder where is this test coming from, right? So now you already know that your product name, this is your product name. So it's going to take in your product name and reuse that for the most part, right? So it's going to take your product name and reuse that product name, to basically show to your users that, oh, you want to grant permission. So yeah, I'll just say, okay, why using this app grant? Boom, we are there. So this is exactly what I was explaining here, that if a permission is not granted, you get to see this particular little component. All right, nice. Now that is actually out of the way, we can, talk about how we can implement the image picker. It's very straightforward, right? So if you want to click on a gallery, it kind of pops up some images, right? So the way we do that is very easy. So now if you click on gallery, we're going to search for gallery. It might not be here, maybe here. So gallery is going to invoke the pick image. The pick image is a prop and it's coming from here, right? So there should be a function called pick image, right? So we invoke this and then we'll just basically return the file. So that's exactly what we are doing. So yeah, I'm going to click on this. I'm just going to click on one of these images. Very good. So yeah, so one other thing I would love to show you is the main thing about the application. How are we featuring this particular image, right? So I think that's actually a $1 million question now. So I click on edit and I have this filter. So there's actually a separate component that we're using to filter, right? And the way it works, I've actually documented a couple of these in the command.md. So I can actually share links to some of the resources with you guys, so you guys can basically understand it as well, right? So as we have this, we are actually using the Shopify Skia. So I'm just going to go over to this link. Okay, so this is what we are doing. So for what you can do in installation, it's very easy. If you are using yarn or npm, you can actually, I've already installed it, so I will not be doing it. So, but then this is actually the command you can use to install this particular package, right? So when you actually do yarn add Shopify Reactive Skia, it's going to install the Skia library for you, and that's actually all the setup you need to do. Nothing too critical, nothing too advanced. If you're using Expo, but if you're using Reactive CLI, you might need to actually do some extra setup, right? So you can actually read through the docs to understand how you can go about that, but it's actually very pretty straightforward. Okay, so one other thing I would recommend is the way we can generate our matrices, right? So before I go into how matrices work, how we are getting all of this featuring, I need to show you a couple of things that I think you should know, right? So we have the canvas. Okay, there we go. So close this up. Okay, so I'm just gonna close this out. So this is section that we're interested in. So this is the file responsible for controlling every aspect of this functionality. Right. So now we go to this main component, which is the image filter section. Right. So yeah, so I'm going to click on this, and you can see the very first thing you see from here is setting of matrices. So the first question is, what is a matrix? So color matrix are basically coordinations of the different color points that you can use to paint an image to the canvas. Right. So the way it works is I'm just going to refer back to the Skia documentation, and under the image you can actually see an image. So you can actually see what you need to do is to basically import an image, right? You can actually use image hook to bring an image in. It could be anything, it could be a link like this, right? And after that, you have to render this image in a canvas, right? So this part is very tricky. You have to pay keen attention. If you do it like this, as it is in the documentation, it will break, right? Because there's actually a little bug here. The canvas requires a fixed width in height, right? So if you don't really have, a kind of demonstration like this, it's going to break things up. You might not actually see anything on the canvas. So if you have your canvas, you can be able to, perform some actions, right? So I'm just going to go back to the code, and I can actually show you the canvas that we already have now. We have a canvas, and we have specified our width and our height. And for the height, we are taking the app height, which is what we are getting from here, the entire window height. And then we just remove like 820 pixels from there. And then that would be our height. And for the width, we are taking up the entire full width. So as you can see, if I open up, the app again, you can see what we have here is basically the full width, right? So the image is taking up the full width of the actual application, which is fine, right? So now we have a kind of a separate thing referred to as a color matrix. Color matrix is coming from Skia, right? It's actually one of those components from Skia. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to basically define the kind of matrix you want to set for this image, right? So first things first, if you're using a canvas, what you need to do, you need to specify a fixed width and height, or nothing will show. So I can actually show you if I were in a dev mode, but now I'm on the deployed app, so I might not be able to show you that. But then you need to prove this. Don't forget this. It's a very important, crucial, right? Crucial. It needs to be included, or else nothing will work, right? So how do I comment in JSX? It's crazy. Okay, so all right, that's fine. I'll just maybe put it in here and then yeah, do something like that. I hope that works. No, it doesn't work. So maybe I can put it on top. Crucial. Okay, put the cursor behind it and do this. Okay, that's one of the weirdest thing I've seen in a while, but it's fine. So yeah, so you need this. It's very important because there were actually some talks about people in the community, in the Skia community, about people encountering difficulty in this part. So this is actually the first part that causes the frustration. So you need to include the width and height. So then we want to talk about the color matrix. So when you want to do with the color matrix, it's basically straightforward, right? So color matrix, I have a particular file. So I'm just going to scroll down and go to constant colors. I don't think it's there. Let's see, UTUS color matrix.ts. Boom. You can actually see we have a lot of some zeros, some ones, some decimal points or what. I don't know what this is, right? I have no idea what is that. So, but one thing I can do is I can show you how you can generate all of these metrics. So yeah, so I can go here, and in the Skia documentation, they actually have recommended this as well. So you can use this platform. It's called the front-end color matrix. So here you can actually be able to grab a hold of different matrices that you want to use, right? So for example, I can actually pick an image, right? And pick this guy or this lady, and I can say, okay, I need some sort of color matrix. Why do I know that, right? I can come in here and add a filter, and I want to do brightness, right? For example, I click on brightness. I can take this to a particular level that I feel I'm comfortable at, and I'll leave it there, and I'll just copy the filter to clipboard, right? So if I do that, I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to have something that looks like this. I'm going to have this, right? So yeah, this everything here doesn't make sense to me. I can actually just remove it. So what I'm interested in is the values, right? So I'm only interested in the values, these values right here. So I can take everything off. Now I have this, right? So this, by definition, is our matrix. So I can actually put this into an array. And what you want to do is to make sure that every space in between, just put comma in between all of them. And that will form a matrix for brightness for you, right? And this is what you can now come in here in your file, right? And give it a name and just put the matrix right in there, right? So this is exactly how you can control it, and you can actually give your users a privilege to be able to, edit it as well by controlling all of this, right? So yeah, so this is exactly how you go about doing all of this. But to make the thing a little bit easier for you, what I've done is you could just copy a single thing, right? You can copy this one, maybe this original image or whatever, and you can just go over to maybe ChatGPT or any of those AI tools. And what we can do is that you can just put in there something like this, right? Generates like 5 different color matrices, like brightness, sepia, etc. Right? So Calculus is just going to generate all this color metrics for you, and that is very cool, right? You can see the one for sepia coming in, you can see the one for grayscale, right? So if you don't feel like using this particular platform that is recommended, you can just use ChatGPT to generate all of this for you. So just to mention, all of this that we have here were actually generated by ChatGPT, which makes it very easy for you to, grab all of this. So if you want to control the different entry points of each of these, probably you want to add a slider for your users to be able to, move the images to the left or right, then you have to control this, right? If you have this, you have to control what you have within there. So that means some of these data points, we have to have some dynamic values that you can update and re-update, right? So yeah, I hope that actually makes sense. So this is what we are now passing into the metrics component, right? So we'll pass this in, and then we can actually control how it looks like. So this metrics component is what is responsible, for doing all of this, right? So if I click on either one of these, but invert, so invert is actually using the invert from here, right? It's using this color invert. Just going to close out everything. It's quite a lot. Okay, it's using this invert color matrix, right? To basically have this kind of effect, right? So yeah, which is very cool. And yeah, so I'm just going to go back through this component. So I show you guys how you can go about this. It's very straightforward. I'm going to start from the very beginning. I'm going to scroll down a bit. So we have a filter. I want to show you how we have this scrollable using the reality flag list, right? So we have the filter option card. So this is actually a separate component I created. So it takes in a couple of things, right? And then we are tracking the index and so on. So what we are doing is, if I select something, I want to see the title, right? So if the filter square image current matrix is equal to the current ID, and the ID is the card currently in view, right? So you know that it's actually like scrollable from left to right. So we can actually keep track of the ID. Okay, so if it matches, then we'll display the title, and then we have these little borders that we are displayed alongside. So we have a special style for that, right? So Let's look for it. Canvas container. Yeah, so this canvas container is what we're using to do the borders. You can see it here, the border with a 3 border color, dark, and border radius. Yeah, so this is it. So, and also, we can actually just, check it out, right? So here we actually, you can notice what we have here, we still have some, we have the effect here. That's because we are still displaying this little thing that you see as actual canvas, right? So this is it right here. This is a little canvas. We specify a fixed. This is the rule of thumb. In your canvas, always specify a fixed width and height, right? For you not to have issues. So we specify a width of 59 and a height of 57, right? And the image actually just covers up the same width, and basically we specify our color metrics to the current color metrics we are taking. That's why you can see we have this quality effect, at the bottom, right? So it's already there having the different color matrices, which makes a lot of sense, right? So we can actually play around with this. You can click on either one of these, and we have access to all of those, right? So you can. There's one other little thing. Is a circular black little thing, little circle at the bottom when you select a thing, right? So this that is called a ball, right? So it has a side. So the width is 10, height is 10. But the radius, if you want something to be circular, give it the same, the border radius should be the height or the width over 2, right? So this is what we have here, 10 over 2. That should give us 5. So 5 will make it rounded, and the background is black. So that's what we have right there. So yeah, so this is exactly, that's our ball, and that's what we're displaying here. So if you're on the current item, we'll show the ball, and if you're on the current item, we'll show the title. Simple, right? Good, good. So one other thing I will show you is the actual component itself. So I'm just going to go through all of them. So yeah, so first off, we're basically setting a matrix. The first matrix that we have is the original matrix. Scroll here. So this is the first matrix, is the original one. And we have a data attribute. This data attribute is, normally what we are doing here is that we are converting, we want to be able to construct an image, right? So I don't want a situation where I get an image from a link, which in this case, in this application, we're not really getting the image from a link. But what we are getting the image from is actually from the user file system, right? So in your gallery, or you snap an image, right? So we have to build this image to become a Skia, a Skia compliant image. So the way we do that is we can actually use this particular functionality. It's actually in the documentation. You can check it out. It's straightforward. So you can use Skia.data, from base 64. We have the source of base 64. So that means any image that you already have in your file system, whatever, by default, basically have a URI base 64, the width, the height, and the size, right? So yeah, we're only getting the base 64 to be able to, construct the image. So now that we have the data of the image, we have to make an image from the encoded data. So we actually use this method to make that image. Now that we have this image, we are good to go. We can easily pass this image to the canvas, right? So to the image within the canvas. And this should be responsible for displaying this huge image. But in our case, this little or tiny image that we see, right? But for this one is responsible for, showing out this huge one. Okay, interesting. Interesting. So one other thing I would do, so this is where we are using a flat list. So flat list right here. Then we're passing the data in. Remember, this data is what we have here, right? So what I'm doing is we already have some color matrix. So I'm getting all the keys from the color matrix object, right? So the color matrix object is basically an object with different keys, and each of these different keys are definitely arrays of numbers, right? Arrays of matrices. So we'll get this, and then we want to get all the different keys. We map through the different keys, and then what we can do is to just give them some random ID using the index, and then we'll give them a type, right? So we're not really using this, it's not really important, but it's something that maybe you want to use in the future. You can just include it. So you give them a type based on the index, and then the title, right? So the title is I will try to capitalize the first. You can see the original is actually capitalized, but as you can see it here, it's just small letter. So we use the capitalized first to really capitalize the first letter, the key, and then we want the actual metrics. How do we get that, right? So, but then we can do the color metrics that we have here, and then we'll get the key, right? So I can do this one basically equated to something like color metrics, and then we'll pass in the key. Maybe the key here is original, pass in original. So this is going to give us, going to output this value. It's going to give us access to this value straight on, right? So that is exactly how we're doing it, and then yeah, so that makes sense. So this is actually our data. It is the same data we are passing to the flat list. That's all the data that's been rendered right here, which makes sense. And then we have the filter option card, which I've shown you before. It takes in all of these different, all of these different characteristics, right? So and then we have this important part. So you can see it's actually horizontal. So by default, flat lists are vertically aligned. So you have to use this flag to tell it that, oh, I want it to be horizontal. And we don't want to have any form of, scrollers, right? We don't want a vertical scroller. We do not want an horizontal scroller. So you can actually do that by setting of these to false, like we have here. And then we have a way to basically like separate this component. You can see there's a space in between. So we have the item separator component, which we've created. It's just simple. So this is it right here. It's just a view. I will just give it some maybe margin horizontal of 6. Right. So yeah, so this is actually our item separator. You can see this actually is separated um, spacing between each of the values, right? And anyone you click on, it sets the matrix to that, right? Yeah. So this was responsible for setting the matrix, right? So set general matrix. So we have a set called matrix on top. I've shown you before, right here, right? So by default is original, and we can be able to set the matrix anytime. So within this flat list, we can set the metrics, right? We can set the metrics. How are we doing that? I'm going to go to filter option card. We have the set general metrics. You can see we have the, so when you click on anything of this particular um, flat list, so it's going to set the state. So on press, you're going to set the general matrix, right? And you're going to set the current index of that matrix to the ID of the code or the color filter we just selected. Right. Yeah. So I think that's basically it. And yeah, very straightforward, guys. It's not really that difficult. So I had to make my research around it to be able to come up with all of this. And I hope you guys basically understand how this works, right? Thank you. And if you have any questions, kindly let me know. I will try do my best to basically answer all the different questions you guys might have. And yeah, catch you on the next one.